Hello everyone, it's me Andrea. Today I will show you this picture I made with the brushes I just showed you. I will use this colors and this stamp from Stampin' Up, beautiful poppies. And I work on very heavy watercolor paper, it's 300 gram, and stamp it down with archival ink, properly inked up, and then pressed firmly onto the watercolor paper, and I really firmly press it down, and I left it on the paper a bit that the ink can soak into the watercolor paper because the surface is quite rough, and that made sure that the image will be perfect. So I work here on the dry page. I put the powder down, or the pigment or crystals, whatever you will call them, and I use an orange and a bit of purple, no, not purple, violet, and spray water on top, as I do now, so, and in that wet area here I put more of that violet, that light violet, and spray over with more water. And on the right, more water now, come on. And on the right I will use the red violet on the dry page again and spray over with water. That's only the start. It's not a lot of water. I start a bit with the heat gun, but sprayed more water and shifted the water around, soak up where I didn't want to have that much water. And on the right it was still too concentrated on some of these areas. I shifted the water around to get nice puddles, but it was far too concentrated. So I used even more water and then shifted it around again and soak up water or puddles where I didn't want to have them. And that's basically it. So this is a stencil from Dine Reveille, and I wanted to work through this stencil with bleach. I use kitchen towel, soak it into bleach, and then dab through this stencil. Problem is it's not very controllable. It seeps down under the stencil. I thought it's an easy thing to do, but it's not very precise. Doesn't matter at that moment, but I will switch over to a brush. And the other thing is, when you use it that concentrated in that amount in the towel, in this paper towel, it gets quite stinky, and so I had to open the window. Think about that. Open the window and ventilate your room. It goes quite into your lung. It blows your nose free, I can tell you. So here I start to use the paintbrush, and it's much more controllable, and you can choose which of these shapes you want to use. You don't have to use the whole stencil, so much better to control. The reason I make this is actually I made a while ago, I have made videos about that, cards with this technique, with brushes and watercolors, actually with bleach and stamped images and stuff. And I gave it to a friend. She needed some cards, and she said, oh, that looks so nice, and that would be great to have it as a picture to hang it on the wall. And I thought, don't know if that works or looks good on a bigger page, but I think it does. And yeah, I framed it in a paper frame. You will see that at the end, and I think it looks quite good. So that's on that side, the last bit. And at the end I use my heat gun to speed the process, the bleaching process up. You know, when you dry it, the bleaching process will take part much quicker when you're a bit impatient. So you can use the heat gun. It's not a problem. So now I go in with this very fine brush into the poppies to get the color out with the bleach out of that image. And I always like this effect. Sometimes I leave, when I have much more paint in the background, I leave the image bleached without anything else. But in this case, I paint over the bleached puppies with brushes in a different color. And that works well on that bleached areas. When it's dry, you can paint over it. It absolutely looks perfect. So I start with the scarlet. That's the paint or the color for the poppy heads. I use here and try to get some drops of water from the brush, but doesn't work, so I sprayed some water down. So, and now I go into all the poppy heads and use this scarlet. So for shading and more contrasting, I use a darker red. I think it's crimson, but I can't really tell you now what it was. And I think it was crimson. It was definitely darker than scarlet. Scarlet is a very intense color, really intense, but it's not dark. So the crimson is much darker. And for this second round, I put even more of this crimson in to have a higher concentrated puddle there, and to have even more contrast and shades into that poppy heads. So then for the stems, I will use 3 different greens and start, of course, with a light one and go over with a medium and then with a dark one. But I think that's basically it with what I do. No, I'm of course shading a bit later with my Derwent pastels, the pencils, but very lightly, because the page itself looks through the colors and through this technique very delicate. So I didn't want to have a very harsh shading. That's why I use the pastels from Derwent. Dry everything and go over the lines again that when they were a bit watery, watered down with all the bleach, so that I started with a Faber-Castell pen, but that wasn't working on this rough surface. It's a very rough surface, the watercolor paper, and used my Copic, my fine liner. That works good. I only wanted to have very fine lines, but for shading I use next my Derwent pastels. In the background colors, actually, you see I use it very light, only a hint of shading there. And I think that's basically it. A bit of light or white shading on the other side with the pastel as well, with the Derwent pastels. A bit of shading outside the flowers and of course on the puppy heads, and that's it. Next you will see is a close up, and at the end you will see some pictures. And then the close up you will see is already the pictures already in the frame. It's a standard frame. You can put it into a wooden frame. Sorry, as you can see here. So that's it. I didn't stamp something over it or put some more texture on top, because I think it's quite a lot of visual texture already, and I liked it as it was. So thanks a lot for watching, guys. I hope you like it, and I'll see you with my next video soon. So have a nice time, guys. Bye bye.